both Jews and Palestinians have narratives of displacement, as you've said and as you've mentioned. And also they both have narratives of resilience as well. How do you see these two histories intersecting? And where do they diverge in ways that fuel this ongoing tension?
So we're using our suffering and placing it on the identity of the other. We're looking at how there's terrorism and there's people who have been killed on October 7th before and after. That's the Palestinian identity, which is wrong. And then they're looking at the displacement and suffering that happened in 48, and they're connecting that to Zionism and the Jews. And so using the suffering that you experience, although legitimate, but associating it to the identity and to the aspirations of the other, which is illegitimate, is what is causing this reality. But to the fact that we have kind of very similar experiences of displacement. As a Jew, I can understand why a Palestinian still wants to be seen as a refugee elsewhere, right? Even though that we were kept as refugees in other lands, right? Wherever we were living in Europe and North Africa, in the Middle East, like Jews that were living in Russia never were treated as Russians. We were never treated as Polish. We were never treated as Moroccan. We were never treated as Yemenites. We were never treated as Ethiopians. Wherever we lived, I can understand why Palestinians, even though that they may have equal rights today in the society that we live in, they still see themselves as a refugee from this land. We have that same connection to the fact that we would also see ourselves as an ongoing exiled people who are now living in lands foreign to us as nomads. That's how we saw ourselves, and that's really how we are. Even if we have a piece of paper that says USA or France or this and that, I always tell people, like, how much was it worth for the Germans that had it for one generation and thought so much that they were Germans? Those pieces of paper burned with them in the ovens, right? So our temporary status does not define our identity, and that status can be removed in 1 second. And we've seen that happen throughout history. So I think there's a lot that we can relate to one another in terms of our displaced experience, in terms of our love in Israel. And I can give you an example. I'd often go to Miami because that's where I grew up. And one time I came back for a good friend of mine's birthday. We went to one of these bars in Miami, and I see this man coming in. I can tell he's Palestinian. Like I just can tell. And then I look, and he has a necklace of what I call Israel, what he calls Palestine. And he's looking at me, and I'm wearing the sutra, right? And he's like, what is that? Is he with us? Is it or not? And a lot of times, like, humans will mirror your reaction. And because I smiled at him, he's like, okay, this is safe. And he comes to me, he's like, hey, how are you? Salam alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. And he's like, where are you from? And I was like, I'm from the same place you're from. He's like, oh, you're from Palestine. I was like, I call it Israel. He's like, oh, that's messed up, bro. And all of a sudden he goes back. I didn't say anything wrong. But the immediate reaction is Israel, Zionism, right. Jew, associated to negativity. And he takes a step back and changes his demeanor. I was like, what did I say that was wrong? I call it Israel. You know that we are Bani Israel. Even in the Quran, it says that. I come from this land. We always know it as Israel. There's several mentions of Israel in the Quran. There's not one mention of the word Palestine. And I have no problem with you calling it Palestine. This is a land that both of our ancestors come from, that both of our descendants belong to. And I started speaking it to him this way, and he's like, wow, I never saw it that way. And then I realized, for the Jewish audience, I have a few brothers. I have 3 brothers. Let's say I was wearing the map of what I call Israel, and I had my Hebrew name Israel on it. That's actually my Hebrew name. But then I have my other brother Mikal, right? Who his name is Shimon, and his Hebrew name, and he had his name Shimon on the map of Israel. Would I feel that he's taking away from me because he has the name Shimon and I have the name Israel? No, because it's the same land and we're connected. So the fact that you call it Palestine, because I know it's unrelated to the history of why it's called Palestine, it's just related to the fact that you've had an experience in this land and you can't identify it as Israel, that's actually something to unite on. We love the same land. We are from the same land. These are things we should unite on. And after explaining it to him in this way, he teared up, we gave each other a hug, and we were able to move forward from that conversation of going against each other to realizing that, it's all in our heads. It's all in a matrix that we're living in. And the moment that we break free from that, all opportunities are available.